G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by CrowCast, of course. And by God, the people that were in the stage got a very, very good pre-show entertainment there. I won't go into it all, but oh my God, it was hilarious. Welcome everyone who's joined us on Discord and on YouTube, of course. Thanks for joining us as always. Thanks for all your support. If you are listening on demand down during the week, don't forget you can join our Discord channel. The links etc are in our descriptions and in our feeds and socials and all the rest of it. It's a good place to be during match day and also during the week. There's plenty of chat going on, so well worth it. I'll tell you what else is well worth it is actually trying to get Macca, where the hell are you? I've got a blank screen now. What the hell are you doing? There you are.
I've got a script, I haven't got you.
Oh, mate, you don't need me. Do you want me? No, you don't need
really.
me, mate. No, you don't need me.
Bloody hell.
Now, Macca, point your camera a little bit down so we can see more than just the top of your scone. There you go. Look at that. Now, for all those watching, I tried my hardest. I've spent the last month looking at Macca's green curtain and I thought, no, I've had a gutful of this. So I tried to get him to put a background on his Teams chat. But do you reckon I could do it? No.
It was. I think it's one of those things. The effort wasn't worth it.
Possibly the funniest thing I've had happen all week. Mac, I'll just crank you up there a little bit so people can actually...
Well, I told you I'd had a shit day all day. Today it's just continued, that's all.
Oh, look, it's good to have you along though, mate. Thanks very much for that. And I know you're struggling, so if you do happen to disappear again, it's either you've pressed the wrong button or you're about to press a button.
Yeah, no, for the crew out there, I've had a very bad gastro today, so I haven't touched a drop, so I'm not pissed or anything like that. It's just feeling really a bit weak, that's all.
Yeah, well, look, after last week's shenanigans and rocking up to the cast 3 bottles in, I'm not going to say you deserved it.
I was fully in, not 3/4.
Oh, shit. Look, nice to have you along anyway. What'd you think, mate? I guess the game on Saturday was enough to make you sick, yeah?
Look, it frustrates me because we haven't got the best team around. There's no argument about that. I will say this, though, he has got them. They try very hard. But once it comes to having shots at goals, I mean, under 9s and under 10s would have kicked better for goal than our blokes do. Let's take it up to 14s or 16s, 30 metres out, straight in front. You've got to kick them every day of the week. And yes, I reckon probably we would have blew, I don't know, would it be 6, 8, something like that, shots at goal that normally an AFL footballer should kick. And therein lies the tail of the tape. It was the same against GWS.
2 weeks running, Mac. 2 weeks running. It's a real problem. And it's one of those things, as you well know, that it gets into your head. And before you know it, it becomes a bit of a virus. And once it's stuck in there, it's very difficult to get rid of. And he's going to have to do something during the week just to break that cycle because, we're not playing well enough for long enough to be able to... not make the most of the opportunities when they're presented to us. And when we do get momentum, we have to make the most of it. And 2 weeks running now, we haven't. And 2 weeks running, had we had made the most of our opportunities, it could have changed the complexion of the game. As it was, we spent all our tickets getting to within a point. And really, we could have actually wiped out that deficit and been in front at 3/4 time.
Exactly. And when you're playing, there's nothing more demoralising than, you've worked your ass off to get the ball down your end, and then somebody's got an easy shot for goal. They blow it, and the opposition then get the ball and they sweep it down the ground and get a goal in return. And, you whether you want to or not, there's no doubt about it. You just drop a little bit. And when it happens time after time, you start to think to yourself, well, I won't tell you what you really think, but, it's it, you just it becomes contagious, in the sense that the next bloke having a shot for goal, he starts to doubt himself. It's all about belief, just total
That's
belief.
Right. Yeah, and when you work your ass off to get finally get a bloody a nice shot 30 metres out like Tex had there at one stage, and for him just to basically half shank it, you could see the complete deflation in the players around him. They'd work their guts off to get the ball into that position. So look, never mind. Look, before we get into talking about our game in full, why don't we do what we always do, Macca, and talk about the weekend's results, shall we?
Yeah, and I'll keep it as quickly as I can.
So hang on a minute before we get onto this, right? So people complained when we took 15 minutes to go through the weekend's results, right? So I thought, all right, fair enough. It's a Crows podcast. We won't spend so long getting through the weekend's results. So we whizzed through it, and people complained. So I'm going to make an executive decision. People that are listening, if you don't want to hear the weekend's results, or if you don't want to hear us waffle on for 10 minutes or so on the weekend's results, then go and make a cup of coffee, pour yourself a glass of wine, tell the kids off, take the dog for a walk. We'll be back with the Crows stuff in about 10 minutes. But Macca, you and I are going to talk about the weekend's results because I enjoy what you've got to say and I enjoy talking about it too. What do you reckon?
Let's start.
All right. Thursday night we had Carlton getting up by 8 points over Geelong, 90-82. Reasonably entertaining game. Carlton benefited, I think, from just having a little bit more strength in the midfield. What do you reckon, mate?
Yeah, it was. I thought it was a quality game actually, because some very good players out there. And Carlton had gone on to and played very well to get a 4-goal lead at 3/4 time. And I thought they'll probably run on and spank Geelong here. But even though they're a fairly old team with a few newbies added in, Geelong did make a good comeback. And but they just Carlton hung on. I think it was 8 points in the end. I think something like that. But we did see, I thought, 2 stars in action. Curnow, you've just got to say, wouldn't you love to have him at the Crows? Just Curnow, he's just an outstanding player. He kicked 5.
And who did we pick just before Curnow in his draft year?
It'd be Billy the Goose or something like that.
No, it wasn't Billy the Goose. It was somebody that we dropped off. I can't remember. Someone in the chat will tell me, but we picked someone that was a failure. Wayne Miller we picked.
Well, he has been a failure, I would say. Yep.
Yeah, Miller instead of Curnow, so that would have been handy. Anyway, never mind.
And the other player I did want to mention was who's possibly the best player in the AFL at the moment, and it's Cameron. 6 goals, 25 disposals. He's playing in the forward line, but he's roving all around the ground. He's just a brilliant player.
He's probably the most informed forward at the moment, I would say.
He's not just a forward, though. I mean, he took marks in the back pocket.
Yeah. Never mind. All right. Then on the Friday night, we had an interesting game made all the more interesting by Brisbane's weird power outages. The Lions hanging on in the end by 11 points. They would have been dark, pardon the pun, if they'd have lost that game. 93-82 over Melbourne. Looked good for most of it. Melbourne looked surprisingly out of sorts, but just couldn't get their midfield going this week, Melbourne.
Oh, big factor though. Gawn. Gawn went down early in the first quarter.
Yeah,
which was a big factor in the game, I thought. Look, I think that it was strange that I think it was possibly about a 20-25 minute delay. favoured Melbourne, who came out full of running, and they were 6-goal down, and in the end, it was only what was it? Less than 2 goals, wasn't it?
Yep.
At the end,
11 points. Yep.
yeah. So, and Oliver was a beast all day, but he was a real beast in that last 10 minutes or so, whatever the game, whatever it was. He was just everywhere. I mean, he's not a pretty looking footballer, but there's not many better.
Doesn't it show you, though, how interesting it is that when a team actually has a break, which amounted to a fairly lengthy timeout, with what I think it was about 12 minutes to go, they're able to regroup, change their game style completely, go for broke, and nearly pull it off. It makes you realise how one-dimensional sometimes footy teams and coaches are, that they can't change tack during the course of a game without that sort of a break. If a club or a team could ever pull off the ability to change momentum like that, or change the way that they play during the course of a quarter and just completely reshape their approach, I reckon they'd slaughter everyone.
Yeah, look, it's a very hard thing to do because you're trying to watch all those different positions, and whereas if you've got 20 minutes, you can analyse bit by bit. And I think over the years, there's probably been 1 or 2 coaches, perhaps had 3 premierships or that on the trot, that have been able to do something like that thing, but very hard to do.
Yeah, Mal Blight used to be able to do stuff like that.
Yeah, he's one.
Yeah. All right. The next game was very entertaining for a variety of reasons. First of all, Collingwood are quite entertaining to watch, and second of all, they thumped Port Adelaide by 71 points, if you don't mind, 135 to 64. And there goes the March Premiers once again.
Yeah, they'll never win a flag while they got Kenny. I actually like Kenny as a person. I think he's a good man, but Port will never win a flag under Kenny. And it's very, very noticeable, the thing, that every time a good assistant leaves Port, like Voss left, then going back about 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, when they lost a couple of good assistant coaches, then they went down the tube as well, which really means he can't coach, and they never get a flag while he is a coach. Just a couple of players to mention there. Dacos, outstanding as always. Horn Francis, I thought, spat the W a couple of times and didn't do very much. And Billy Frampton played a useful game for Collingwood.
It wasn't a terrible game by Billy. And I did notice Horn Francis stopped to a walk instead of chase a couple of times there. And that's going to be a feature of his career, I reckon, when things aren't going his way. His career will be defined by how he can build some resilience. Because at the moment it's all one-way traffic with Horn Francis.
Well put.
He only had, I think, 49 or 52 fantasy points this week. Yeah. And I was surprised he had that much, to be honest. He had absolutely no impact on the game. Rosie, a little bit more impact on the game. Port have too few good players, in my opinion. They have a pretty decent midfield. But they have a misfiring forward line, and I think they have a bog average defence, to be honest with you.
Agree with every comment of that.
Yeah. Now, who did Craig McRae used to be an assistant at, Macca? Richmond, right?
Richmond, yeah.
Yeah. And who are Collingwood playing like at the moment?
Very much like Richmond, yeah.
100%. 100%. He either learnt very well from Damien Hardwick, or he was the architect down there at Richmond, because they are playing that same run and gun football, bullocking it forward. They've got quality around the ball, and they've got a couple of good pillars either end. And watch out. We'll skip our game for a sec, and we'll move on to the Bulldogs getting done by 51 points over resurgent St Kilda under Rusty Lane. And I'm really pissed off because I thought I tipped St Kilda until I looked at my tips and realised I tipped bloody Western Bulldogs. Idiot.
Well, I did tip St Kilda, thing.
Good call.
They are a revitalised team. It's interesting. I've never been a fan of Ross Lyon, but he must have something about him because he has impact when he first goes to a club. Now, whether he can sustain that, I don't know. But as far as the Bulldogs are concerned, there's a comment in the chat says they're done. Well, they are done. And I think Luke Beveridge he's in real problems because that team looked very, very ordinary, and he's got some good players that only play average football as well. And he's one that doesn't seem to be able to think on his feet either.
Yeah.
So
just going back to Craig McRae real quick, I have a feeling we may have knocked back his application when the coaching job opened up that Matty Nix got. I'm pretty sure Craig McRae applied.
He did apply, and we did not. He was talked about at one stage as a likely candidate, and then Nix got it.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
Oh boy. Dear oh dear. Anyway, yeah, I agree with you with Rossi Lyon. He does seem to straighten up teams very quickly. They still look like they lack cattle, in my opinion, but he's got them working very well as a team. But I agree with you. And this is my observation of Western Bulldogs last year too, Mac. They just look like they're playing without any system whatsoever.
There is no system. It's zero. And that's what I think they're in for a horrible year unless they can have get a game going. But there is no game plan there. I can't see one.
Yeah, Rabbit in the chat says Lion Ball doesn't stand up in grand finals. Well, I tell you what, mate, they came within a bounce of winning one. So I'm not sure whether you can say that. He was a bee's dick away from winning one with Lion Ball. So we'll see how they go this year. I don't think they're contenders this year. They need to add a little bit more talent, I think.
Yep.
But they'll be in and around the mark. Over in the West, North Melbourne under Clarko, another coach, getting up by a point over a disappointing Fremantle. Fremantle, after promising so much after last season, have just fallen in a bit of a hole, and North are obviously playing with a bit of belief under Clarko, and a pretty good win by them.
Well, they looked like they were going to win quite comfortably. They were about 2-4 up, and there was only about 3 or 4 minutes to go. And Fremantle just went berserk in the last 3 or 4 minutes and got within a point with just under a minute to go. And it was down and they kept attacking into the forward pocket. A North Melbourne player got it and kicked the ball deliberately out of bounds around just about 5 metres short of the 50-metre mark.
Yeah.
But the siren went after the ball went across the line.
No, it didn't. They released the raw video today with the audio, and the siren went before the ball crossed the line.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Oh, sorry. But the question I was going to put to you. They said that even if there was the other way around, if the boundary umpire hasn't waved the indicated the out of bounds thing before the siren goes, then the central umpire can't give the free. But my thoughts are, if the actions happen, why can't they?
Yeah, but it's moot anyway, Macca, because the ball was still in play when the siren went. The ball had not crossed the boundary line. If you go back, I forget where I saw it. It was on Twitter somewhere, and they released the raw footage with the raw audio, and you can clearly hear the siren go before the ball goes out. You can actually hear the umpire call siren as the ball's going out, and for that reason, it was a correct call.
Yes, apparently so under the rules of the game. I was disputing whether the rule was fair, that was all. Because if you kick the ball... Well, you kick the ball and the siren goes and it's running towards the goal and it goes through, it'll count as a goal.
Correct.
So why isn't this is the same thing?
It is. It's a reasonable point, Macca, that you make.
Yeah, anyhow, it's just a curious thing, and then it was. I know if I was free, I'd feel robbed.
Well, no,
But
they can't say they were robbed. I mean, that's the rule. The rule
not
was
right.
in
No,
place. It wasn't an interpretation. And also, I mean, they were going to have a shot from 55 metres out on the boundary.
about
Fairly,
yeah, probably right on the 50. They would have had to kick from. Yeah.
yeah. End of the game. Um, it's questionable whether they would have even made the distance, to be honest, let alone kicked a goal.
Who knows? We'll never know.
Anyway, it was a good effort by North, and Freo in a bit of a hole that they're going to have to dig themselves out of. Today, we had Sydney absolutely walloping Hawthorn by 81 points, 118 to 37. Apparently, combined, Hawthorn's first two losses are the biggest combined first two round losses they've had since 1950, Macca.
Yeah, well, my main comment about that game, it's not worth talking about it because it was totally one-sided, and Hawthorn are writing their name on the spoon right now.
Well, they certainly could do with a number one pick. Essendon, comfortable in the end. The Suns put up a little bit of a fight, but Essendon comfortable in the end by 28 points, 108 to 80.
Scores a level at three-quarter time, Thane, and anybody's game, but Essendon really got their game going in the last quarter, and they ran all over them in the last quarter to have quite a comfortable win in the end. So, yeah, look, a reasonable effort by Gold Coast, but they're certainly travelling better than we are at the moment.
Yes, and West Coast in another unpredictable result, getting up over the Giants. I don't know what that says about our form at the moment. West Coast by 19 in the end, 100 to 81 in the late game.
Yeah, well, that was going to be my comment about that particular game. We wouldn't spend a lot of time on other than to say, well, Giants beat us and West Coast beat them. If you go by that, we'll have trouble against West Coast. I think we're going to have trouble against most teams if we play like we are at the moment.
Well, I'm not as doom and gloom as many people. I just think there's enough there to work with. I think Porking has really hampered us. I don't think it's an easy start to the season for us. GWS away and Richmond at home, and another fairly and a pretty solid one coming up too, mate.
We're a big chance to be 0-5.
We are, but let's not get ahead of ourselves. Let's talk about the game at hand, and it was Richmond 17 goals, 6-108 to Adelaide 10 goals, 16-76, a margin of 32 points. They had 23 scoring shots to our 26, but we couldn't convert, Macca.
No, and as I say, too many. I reckon 6 to 8 of those were gimmies in the sense that you would expect an AFL footballer to kick them, and
yes,
it's not just a one. It's not just a one-off situation. It's something that's been a curse of ours for at least a year or two, and they're letting themselves down because you can't say they're not putting in effort. They are putting in effort, and sometimes they play some very good passages of play. I think the fact that we ran out of legs in the last quarter was predictable because we had the 6-day break and Richmond had a 9-day break, and they hadn't played in the type of conditions either that we had. We played in about, was it 38 or 39 degree heat and 70%.
35 degree heat.
Let's
not
let me
get
exaggerate.
Carried away. It wasn't bloody Death Valley or something.
Come on, let me exaggerate just a little.
Look, I think this is a theme that we're continuing on from last year, Macca, because I think it was lost at bloody selection.
Look, there's no doubt about that. And a very poor selection.
I have not heard, and unfortunately no bastard in the presser actually had the balls to ask what the reason was, or a reasonable reason for dropping Jordan Butts. Have you?
No, there hasn't been a word said, other than surprisingly. That's the only thing that I've read somebody said. Surprising.
Well, of course.
somebody says that in the chat it wouldn't make any difference, but it would have in the sense that they've had a rookie player who I think he's played a few minutes a couple of years ago or something, or one. But it's basically his first game essentially. He's kicked 3 goals from 3 marks, and yeah, and nobody could get near him. He's too tall.
So I want to queue up Matty Nix's presser in a minute, but I can tell you right now, and we will look at this in a minute. I can tell you right now that it made a hell of a difference, because as soon as Himmelberg went back, their whole game style changed. So at the beginning of the game, I don't know whether you noticed this, Macca, but at the beginning of the game, they were usually Richmond will run the ball at you, right?
Yep.
But if you notice, this week they weren't running the ball at you. They were actually kicking the ball long over lines. They were trying to get over the back of our at whatever press we had, but they were trying to get it into their forward line as quickly as possible, and they were going in by air. And the reason for that, mate, is pure and simple, isn't it? Like, it's fairly obvious.
Yes, there's no doubt about that.
You
No,
know.
I think you're right. I think the selection, that selection down back, was very, very poor, and I thought they would they, if we had would they have played that tall lad on the ground as long, or even played him if we had named Butts?
Well, I mean, maybe they would have, maybe they wouldn't have. But I just don't. I mean, Jordan hasn't been setting the world on fire, but he certainly hasn't been the worst. Certainly hasn't been the worst, Macca. And
No.
why do you... We have gone through in this structure before. We've gone short, and it has a knock-on effect. When you don't play Geordie Butts or you don't play Murray, one of the two, all of a sudden you lose any sort of worth you get out of Tom Duday and also Geordie Dawson, right?
Yeah, I thought dramatically with Dawson. Dramatically, because he's minding bloody Rewalt, and I thought Dawson played well. Don't get me wrong, I thought he played very well, but was not playing in a position that he could hurt the opposition. He's actually trying to save all the bloody time. I just think, I think it was poor.
Yeah. Look, it was actually, I couldn't understand it, Macca. I couldn't understand it, to be honest with you.
Gotta love Cat Price Service.
It was
What
was
was
one of
that?
those. Oh, it's just a video I'm starting up in a minute. It was one of those things where it just didn't make any sense.
No, I agree.
And I don't know why they did it. No one's asked Nix the question as to why they didn't do it. And whoops, I'll just play Matty Nix's presser in a minute. Let me just set this up.
Oh.
But yeah, it had a massive impact on the way, not only the way we played, but how Richmond played as well. Because when we threw Berg back, and I'll show you the vision in a minute, immediately Richmond had to change, and it also immediately brought Tom Duday into the game. Immediately.
That's true, and that's in spite of the fact that Himmelberg doesn't normally play in that position. So, and look, he did a fair task, not outstanding, but he did a fair task.
Didn't mind it at all, Mac. To be honest with you, he's played back as a junior.
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah, so he played in defence at centre half back. I think even in his under 18 year, he played a fair bit of down back. But I just want to play Matthew Nix's press conference because it really pissed me off, and we'll just stop it and have a bit of a chat as we go through.
Okay.
Yourself in that first half by constantly shooting themselves in the foot.
You nailed it. It was almost self-inflicted, wasn't it? It was, it was quite painful. I think we're all extremely frustrated now, and we were coming in at half-time. when you're under pressure, there's a certain way you need to play, and we had 9 goals in a row kicked against us today. You don't win too many games doing that. So you saw our best. You can see what we can do. You saw that in the third. The fourth, we're trying some stuff, but unfortunately, you're seeing both sides at this point, and we have to get better in those moments where, when 2 goals or 3 goals are kicked against us.
So, Mako, we have to get better when 2 goals or 3 goals are kicked against us.
But that's a nothing state.
How much of that is... I mean, obviously the players have a responsibility in that regard, but if the coach is sitting on the sidelines, he's got eyes in the stands and all the rest of it. Surely, if you can see momentum happening, and Richmond certainly had momentum towards the end of the first quarter and certainly in the first half of the second quarter, isn't it incumbent on them to do something? And the fact that halfway through the second quarter, or with about probably 12 minutes to go in the second quarter, I think, they finally put Himmelberg back. And it was really only forced on them by, it was precipitated by Parnell being subbed off, which gave them Thilthorpe on the bench. Otherwise, they would have had to have taken Himmelberg out of the forward line and left us short in the forward line. The fact was that through weird-ass bloody team selection, we actually had Riley available to us, which meant that we could push Himmelberg down back without, losing too much up forward. But they basically, when they made that move and the game squared up after that, and we only lost the game in the last 20 minutes when we really had nothing left in the tank. That was basically an admission to me that the coaches and the selection panel had royally messed up.
Well, I think it was very obvious that they'd messed up. And listening, and firstly, I should mention that replay was very patchy, Fiend. We sort of missed bits and pieces out of it as it went along.
Okay. Well, that might be so in Discord, but it probably won't be so in YouTube and Spreaker, so you'll just have to put up with it, unfortunately.
Bit tough, we can do that. But what I was going to make it, really, when he was making his, it was quite a long session too, when he was doing his chat with the media. But really, it's just rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
That could be one of his things from last year or the year before. It's just rinse and repeat, and we have to be patient. Well, no, I'm not.
Well, let's continue.
Okay.
Today that was 3 times in the game. 3 goals and then 6 goals, and then our inability to turn that around, or to have maybe our mindset right in that moment. What's needed next for our team. That's our area of growth. But we drift away from what we know we need to do, and it's not selfish. It's actually the opposite. We're trying so hard for the team. We've had this issue before. Today was on steroids, unfortunately. The boys, we want to win the game in that moment, and it's not time to win the game. It's time to actually stop the bleeding.
It's the second week in a row that we've seen those.
So he's basically saying there that the team on the field aren't recognising that it's time to either slow the game down or turn it into a scrub or get players behind the ball or whatever they train to stop momentum. Yet Matthew Nick's coached from the boundary the whole game, Macca, and we have 70-odd rotations during the course of a game.
Yep.
Surely, if that's the call that we need to stop momentum and we need to play a different way, then surely he's able to make that call from the boundary line.
Well, if he's got the ability to do it, you mean.
And surely, if you've got, he's pointing it out in the presser. So they obviously observed that at times the Crows remained too attacking in their setups or what have you, when it would have been better to set up more defensively. And I think Mark Rashudo actually called it in the commentary that there was a time where we should have gone far more defensive, particularly in our centre square, but also our centre square wasn't terrible, but our stoppage clearances were terrible in terms of the way we set up. We were far too attacking, and they were able to get some very decisive stoppage clearances in the first half. I'm not absolving the players at all, but sometimes, as we saw with the Melbourne-Brisbane game, sometimes it needs a regroup, and sometimes it needs someone off the field to actually make a call. And I would have thought that Matthew Nicks was perfectly placed being on the bench to make that call.
Well, I figure that's why he's down there. If he's not making calls, and while he's down there, then what's the point of him being there? I think, in fact, quite frankly, all he's doing is chatting to each player as they come off.
Yeah, well, you're supposed to be coaching from the bench if you're down there. Anyway, let's continue.
I guess the two sides to the team. I mean, what do you have an idea what that's down to? Is it as simple as saying inexperience, or?
No, it's just a lack of consistency. And I've said that throughout the pre-season. Our challenge is to become a consistent football side, and it's a lack of consistency in what we do. And the best sides in the competition have it. It's clockwork. They believe what they're doing. They stick to it under pressure, even under pressure. We're still a group that are learning how to do that. And it's frustrating for everyone, frustrating for our supporters, because they come into a game and they watch a third quarter where, it's exciting, and we put our oppo under pressure and we kick 9 goals, in that second half, and it's all there, and we don't quite get the job done, but you can't sort of be off for as long as we were off today.
I don't disagree with him there, because what I observed, I rewatched the game today, and what I observed, Macca, was that the way we move the ball, and I might just at this point just chuck up a couple of examples if I can. Let's just have a look at these real quick. Oops. We might just start that again, I think. So, for those listening on Spreaker, sorry, you haven't got the vision to watch. But what I'm pointing out here is the way we're moving the ball. And the way we're moving the ball is not how we move the ball in pre-season. This one here in particular, this is the one where Hinge kicked it out wide to Scholl. Or someone else, and then it went to Scholl. Scholl's ended up kicking it down the line to Tex. Now I'm going to stop it there. Oh, hang on. Let's just go back. Sorry for people for moving my camera then. It's very unprofessional of me. All right. So this is a situation here with Tex, Macca. Texas, do you recall this play?
I haven't got it on at the moment, mate.
No. So it was in the second quarter, and Hinge has got it from the outside. And we've taken the ball down the flank, and we've kicked the ball into our forward 50. Kicked the ball to the wing to Tex, and at this point Tex has got a decision to make. Right, so we've got blokes in the middle of the ground, and we've got a bloke down on the boundary side. Now, during the pre-season, what we would have seen is Tex kick the ball into the middle. We had two blokes here. You can see them both at this point with their hands up, one in the centre circle. He was the target. And remember how we were commenting in the Fremantle and in the West Coast game, Mac, how one of the pleasing things was our ability to change lanes when we're going forward. Remember?
Yeah, that is so important. Yeah.
One of the things that we have not been doing is changing lanes when we go forward. And if we play this one through, you can see that Tex ignores the two blokes. He looks and ignores, and he ends up going down the line to 1-on-2. Rochelle and Berry hardly targets, and the ball ends up getting dead. And that to me is indicative at the moment of how we're playing. We are not, and I think he's actually right in what he's saying, that we are not using the ball under pressure the same way we were using the ball during the pre-season when we weren't under perhaps so much pressure. Would you agree with that?
Oh, there's no doubt about that. I thought we were very free flowing in the pre-season, and we were actually. I remember you making comments in both games about changing lanes, and we were crisscrossing all over the place, and then that's why we scored so well in those games because we were.
And Jad in the chat makes the perfect comment because he's exactly right. In the third quarter, we started doing that. We started chipping the ball into the middle. We started doing the 45-degree diagonals, and actually, not only were we changing lanes, but we were also moving the ball further down the ground. So our forward 50 entries were going into deeper into the forward 50. And that's one thing that Richmond were doing very much in the first half. They were able to get a lot of depth in their forward 50 entries, whereas our forward 50 entries were quite shallow. I'll just go to the end of this one here. So, Berry's kick there going wide, we would never have made that kick. We would never have played that kick prior to. And that ball just comes straight back in. So even though Berry missed the kick, we would never have done it. And then Hinge has gone straight back out, and he's kicked it to a 1-on-3. Look at the Richmond players around Lockie Scholl, who was the target there. Never should have been. This is that one again that I was talking about before, where Hinge has kicked it out wide. That might have been Max Michelani, I think. Over to Scholl, who's chipped it over to Tex. Tex should have looked straight inside. There are two blokes there inside, ignores them, and ends up kicking down the line to a contest with Berry and Rochelle and one of their defenders. And obviously the ball gets killed. It's completely opposite to how we were moving the ball in the pre-season. And the reason why we got so excited. Now, here's another one. This ball would have gone to Berg in the pre-season. Straight up would have gone straight to Berg. Instead, it gets held up, and Murray kicks it into the man on the mark. And he ends up getting the ball back and then kicking it to Berg. And by that time, Shai Bolton's been able to push up. And the moment's lost. For some reason, we are not moving the ball the same way as what we did in the pre-season. Now, is it pressure, Macca? Is it pressure or is it something else?
No, it's pressure in the sense that in those pre-season games, the pressure is nowhere near as much as it is when you're playing for 4 points. And Richmond are a good side at applying pressure too. So it is pressure. There's no doubt about that. And it's still, what it means is though, our football instincts aren't right in the sense that you have a look at, if you talk about Geelong, and they're a good side, but even though when they're sort of fading, they generally kick to the right place because they've been doing it for a long time. And in other words, they've learned how to do it and they keep doing it. Our players do it if they think about it, but it's not an instinct to do it.
So we'll just go on a little bit further with Nix's press conference and then we'll move on. Where are you, Matty? That one. That's what we want.
At this point is that time, knowing that I've got a little bit more time at that moment, and it is easy from, row triple Z up the back, I've sat in the coach's box and been frustrated and, we've got to be better, but it is, I've down on the bench today, you can see the way, how hard these guys go, and, the game is a brilliant game, and it's so challenging out there, but you see the players with experience, it's slower for them. It slows down, and they know the time they have, they make it look easy.
So, Macca, I counted maybe 3 or 4 times when Brodie Smith, a senior experienced player, dump kicked the ball out of contest when he had a handball option. I saw Rory Sloane dump kick the ball 3 or 4 times when he had options. I saw Rory Laird miss. The stats give him 5 turnovers. I counted 10. He had a shocker, Rory Laird. For the amount of ball that he got, his disposal, and he just had he had one of those dirty days where nothing went right for him. But we had Tex Walker missing shots for goal. They're our experienced players. The reason why they are in the side is because they're experienced. Now, to me, the blokes that got us back into the game were Rochelle and Saligo in the third quarter. They were dynamic out of the midfield, and they were actually able to generate some run and carry. But our experienced players, the ones that Nick says the game slows down for, are not giving us anything, not giving us a thing.
Well, we've been on the Smith bandwagon for some time. Rory Laird, I agree with what you said about his usage of the ball. I will give him kudos, though. He does go and get the ball, and he does go in very hard to get the ball. So it's not a lack of effort.
Nobody's saying it's a lack of effort, Matt. Nobody's saying it's a lack of effort.
But he hasn't got the natural ability, once he's got the ball, to use it to deadly effect. In other words, he dump kicked a lot.
I've not seen Rory Laird turn the ball over as much as at any stage as much as he did in that game against Richmond. I mean, against GWS, he just dead set didn't get it, but he got a ton of it against Richmond. And I'm a Lairdy fan, but he had a dirty day, and a lot of his handballs went astray. Some direct to the opposition. It cost us at least 3 or 4 goals, Mac. He's an experienced player. He's in our midfield as an experienced player. Now, many would say that Berry had a down game and Harry had a down game, and I would probably disagree a bit on Berry. I thought he worked hard, not quite the output we'd expect, but I felt it was a better game. Harry had a shocker. That's another conversation. But Rory Laird is our experienced midfielder, Mac.
Well, as I said, at least he did work hard enough to get the ball, although he didn't use it well. Berry, I disagree with you. I thought he had a stinker. He's had 2 stinkers, and he's not looking like anywhere like the player that played last year. Nothing like it.
Yeah,
11,
but
11
Macca. What's the difference between Rory Laird and Sam Berry?
Well, at least one is at least winning contests.
What's the difference between the two of them? About 200 games?
But by the same token, and you take Berry hadn't played as many games last year as he has this year. He's played more games now than he had when he was going well last year. So I don't think that's a valid excuse for him.
Of course it's a valid excuse. He's not even played 50 games. He's not even played 50 games, and Rory Laird, I don't care how many times Rory Laird gets the ball, if he costs us 3 or 4 goals, how many score involvements did he have? We'll have a look a bit later, because I'm telling you right now, he cost us more than he gained us.
That might be so, but I still think you're being very kind to Berry.
Well, I'm being realistic to a player that's played 30 games or 40 games.
And also Shuey, I thought, was a stinker.
Well, yes, I'll agree with you on that one. But what I'm talking about is the output of our senior players, Macca. And you can't tell me that we are getting any value out of our senior players at the moment, bar Jordan Dawson, who is only just a senior player.
No, but we don't have that player in our midfield, that one that can make a break and then just do the lovely 40-metre daisy cutter right onto their chest. We do it occasionally, very occasionally.
Macca, you're not picking up what I'm putting down, mate.
Well,
I'm not just talking about the midfield. I'm talking... Matthew Nix said in that press conference, he was talking about experience, and and what he was alluding to was the fact that Richmond had more experience, and therefore in the clinches, under pressure, their experience was a factor. What I'm saying is that our experienced players compared to their experienced players gave us nothing.
I wouldn't go as far as say nothing, and I think you are being harsh on Laird in one sense that at least I feel his effort was good, even if the disposal was poor. But there were a lot of other players though who are experienced players on our side, Smith, etc., who played very poor games, gave very little to the team's effort overall. And I have to agree with you that Laird could do a lot better with the usage of the ball. He should have, but unfortunately he does tend to dump it, and it does work against us.
Most of his turnover was by hand, Mac.
Well, actually, I'm trying to think. I can't. Look, there were so many errors made. I'm just trying to actually think of.
Most of Rory Laird's errors that cost goals were by hand. He handballed it to the opposition at least twice. He kept trying to handball it to bloody Riley O'Brien when Riley wasn't even ready. I'm telling you right now, Rory Laird's turnovers that cost us goals were by hand.
Look, you may well be right, Fina. I just can't remember it offhand.
Well, I finished watching it about an hour before the podcast, so it's fresh in my mind.
Fair comment. I'm not arguing with it on that particular point.
So, I don't think it's reasonable for Matthew Nix to say that experience is a reason. I think Matthew Nix actually has to turn the blowtorch on our experienced players. There was no mention of Tex Walker missing goals. There was no mention of Brodie Smith dump kicking. There's no mention of Wayne Miller and not even being able to make the side. There's no mention of Rory Laird panicking under pressure. There's no mention of Rory Sloane, who shouldn't be playing because he's clearly not right, not giving us anything off a wing.
He was hopeless.
Well, not even that he was hopeless, Macca. He's not fit. He's not fit.
Well,
he can't run two ways. He can't change direction. He was limping half the game. Why are we playing him?
He's playing on reputation and, because of the fact that he was our captain. But Nix hasn't got the guts to say, look, unfortunately, you're not good enough. And because at the moment, he's not good enough to be in the side.
Well, he's not fit enough to be in the side, Macca. That's the thing. Like, he was limping for half the game. I saw him limp half the game.
I saw it too.
Why is he on the ground?
I agree. He shouldn't have been there.
From that point of view, I'm a bit dark on Nix for that, and we won't go through any more of his press conference because it annoys me. But I think Matthew Nix now is in denial.
They are rinse and repeat, as I said, Dean, and he doesn't get down to the real nitty gritty of what the problem is, and the problem is him and his fellow coaches and selections and who they're trying to promote as players. There's so many things wrong from his point of view that don't get mentioned in his comments. Whereas, as I said, you hear one because when we're after a loss, and it's really the same as everyone you ever heard. There'll always be a common thread there. We're young, we're developing. Give us time, all this shit. And look, I at the beginning of the season, I thought if we go well this year, Nix has been a good appointment. But if we are only going to be the same as last year, then we have got the wrong coach. And seriously, at the moment, I'm thinking we've got the wrong coach.
Well, let's have a look at the teams that have bounced this year so far. St Kilda have bounced a bit. North Melbourne seem to have bounced a little bit.
They have bounced,
Collingwood, I wouldn't say have bounced because they were on an upward trajectory anyway. But one thing that both of those coaches have got those teams doing is playing within their limitations and playing to their strengths, right?
Yep.
Now, I think it's particularly arrogant for Matty Nix to send a side out to play a certain way of game style that is clearly A, not sustainable from a fitness level, and B, not sustainable from a skills level under pressure. I mean, we were happily chipping the ball around like superstars in the trial game, and I think we mentioned at the time, how's it going to hold up under pressure? Well, it hasn't held up under pressure. After 2 weeks, it's quite obvious the teams aren't going to give us the corridor the same way that bloody West Coast and Fremantle did in the trial game. Richmond just clogged up the corridor, and the only way to break through it is with aggressive ball movement. And under pressure, we are not capable of aggressive ball movement, which is why we turn the ball over so much. And because we had a stupid selection policy to go short in defence, every time we turned it over, there were two tall blokes standing there waiting for it. And Matty Nix in his presser says, I don't think going short had any bearing on the game. That's a bloody ridiculous comment to make when that young lad kicked Sam Ryan or whatever his name is, kicked 2 goals in that first quarter. One of them out on a lead, but the other one in a pack where we were just outnumbered for big men. We had Nankervis was smart and took O'Brien out, and then we had Murray obviously watching Lynch, and it ended up being Dawson's job to cover the bloody 210 centimetre bloke.
Yeah, it was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous, and I was very angry.
Of course, that's had a bearing on the game because it's given them 2 goals, and then it gave them another one later on. You can't, and to give up those goals early. And the only reason, as I said, is that we were able to actually cover them eventually is because poor old Paddy Parnell went down and we had to bring on Riley Thilthorpe, and then we had to shuffle our bigs around. And he chucked Himmelberg back. Not one mention of that.
Let me ask you a question, Fiend. In all the time that Nix has been doing presses, have you ever heard him say that it was his fault or his coach's? Not once. No. Not once has he ever. And... he's got, as I say, he just rinses and repeats the same old story all the time. But, the players have got a few more games under their belt, but we're not going forward. And, well, I think we signed him up until the end of next year, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, but that doesn't make any difference.
Look,
a lot of people are saying, the squad's shit and all the rest of it. And I agree, there are holes in the squad. And I've banned you from talking about past drafts, Macca, but we both know that we missed opportunities in past drafts and we're paying for it.
Heavily.
But if you look at the side that's on the park, there's still a lot of talent there. And I don't think, I want to ask you, the only draft question I will ask you, I remember last year when we were talking about the Rankin trade before it was happening, and my thought was that Rankin was worth between 12 and 15. And we had
I was adamant about it.
And we had young Mateus Philippou there, sitting there, who ended up going at 10. We had pick 5.
Yeah.
It was now, I'm not hanging shit on Rankin, okay, because he's obviously a talent. But another example of, and we've done it twice in 2 years, we spent 18 plus some stuff for Geordie Dawson, and we're playing him as a deep back quarterback, right? We paid pick 5 for an uncontracted Isaac Rankin, pick 5, and he's a small forward that has the odd run up the ground.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, our midfield is shit. Now, like I said, I don't want to go back through past drafts, and we all know the story, and we've talked about ad infinitum. But it struck me today that why would we pay what we paid for Jordan Dawson and then not use him? That's self-preservation on Matthew. That's completely selfish on Matthew Nix's behalf, in my opinion.
Well, because of our deficiencies in other areas, that we've got too many deficiencies, Fiend. And
No, but it's
Dawson
shit.
Dawson
Stiff
was
shit with the
brought in-
deficiencies.
Well, when Dawson came, they said that he would occasionally go back, but it would essentially be brought to play on the wing or the middle. And, as we can see when the game against Port, when he was in that particular position, good enough to win a game with the pressure on. So, I mean, Dawson is quality, absolute quality. And, you've got him as you say, in a back pocket, which is bloody ridiculous.
In the second game he played for us, he won the game after the siren, taking a shot for goal. That he didn't earn. Lockie Murphy earned it. But in those first few games, he was pushing forward quite a bit, and then Matthew Nix has decided that he is going to be our stopgap down back.
Yep.
As a consequence of that, Josh Worrell didn't get a lot of game time last year until he basically bashed down the door.
Yep.
Josh Worrell could have quite easily got game time. We messed around playing with a short defence half the time, which meant that we needed a Jordan Dawson back there. Matthew Nix is selfishly using Jordan Dawson, and I would rather see Jordan Dawson up on a wing or through midfield rotations and us have a problem at half back than have Jordy Dawson there just having the ball bounce into him the whole time.
Well,
And more to the point, Macca, sorry to interrupt you there, more to the point, Macca, for what we spent on Jordan Dawson, it is just an inefficient use of resources to have him playing that role.
Well, no argument from me. What Nix is doing, he, instead of just admitting that we have deficiencies down back, you pay, as you say, you use your first round draft pick, and you get, and he was huge value for pick 18, huge value, because he's our best player. He is our best player. And yet you don't put your best player into a bloody back pocket. He should be where the ball is, where he can actually influence the game rather than try and save it all the time. And I agree with you. He should be where the ball is, and with the deficiencies down back, play juniors or do whatever you have to do, play the most informed person at the time. And if we get beat doing that, at least we're learning. Where at the moment we're learning nothing, because
Let me ask you this, Mac. Let me ask you this, right? Who would be now? I know Sloane is hobbling at the moment, but why would you play Rory Sloane on a wing and Jordy Dawson down back when Rory Sloane is decent overhead and could play a similar role with a lot of experience, and have Jordy Dawson play on the wing?
Well, I did say it before the season started, Fiend. If Sloane is going to play, the only players he can play, in my opinion,